Welcome, everybody, to the latest episode of Club Fantasy's No Punt Intended. Yes, you're seeing my face, Joshua Hudson, because that means Joe Zollo is not here once again, because he has this, job that keeps him away. And I don't know, maybe you've heard they're going to be on ESPN Plus tomorrow and repping the new motors, or what is it? The Missouri River Motor Boaters. That's the whole thing right there. Okay, cool. But anywho, sticking with the theme, though, because when Joe's not here, we have, the goat of guests on, all the time. So joining myself and Ryan, yes, the absolutely fabulous Liz LOZA from ESPN is joining us, and we are so excited to have her, and we're talking about the Buffalo Bills, the Cincinnati Bengals, and the San Francisco 49ers as we continue on with our look inside team previews. Stay tuned.
What is up? Good evening and welcome to No Punt Intended, presented by Club Fantasy. I am your host, Ryan Weisse, because apparently Joe Zollo is allergic to amazing guests. I don't know what the guy's problem is. Our streak of all three of us being together lasted precisely 1 week, but as you heard in the intro, Josh Hudson's still with me. How you doing tonight, Josh?
I'm fantastic, and we could not have a better guest for this week, and I'm so hyped. So thank you for responding to my email and my DM, Liz.
Yeah.
Well, you slid in a respectful way. So
this is how you do it, guys. Slide into the DMs respectfully.
And you did the follow-up, because lots of people will DM me and say, come on my show. And Instagram is not a place where I can spend the mental energy wading through those kind of requests. So I say, hit me up at my email. Here it is. And you'd be surprised how many people are like, nah, that's copying and pasting. It's a lot.
Way too hard.
Oh, God. I know, though. We're all tired. We're all tired, and it's only July.
I was going to say, if I get to do a show with Liz LOZA, the effort is worth it. So
right? That's what I'm saying.
I have to say, this one-day trade we're doing with ESPN seems to be working out way more in our favor. Because as Josh alluded, Joe's college baseball team, the Bismarck Larks Summer College League baseball team, now going as the Missouri River Motor Boaters, are going to be on ESPN Plus. But instead, we get ESPN's Liz LOZA to talk fantasy football with. Liz, this is my first time doing a show with you, though I know you've graced the Club Fantasy airwaves before, but it is an honor. Just welcome.
Thank you, Ryan. I know you said you were from the Canton area of Ohio earlier in the pre-show, and I just want to let you know that one of the biggest unrequited flames of my life, one of these crushes, was Brian at Bible camp, and he was from Canton. And now, since you said that, all I can think about is him playing acoustic guitar. So thanks for bringing me back.
Now, I guess the real question is he from actual Canton? Because I actually have a bitter hatred in my heart of the city of Canton, Ohio, because I grew up in the next town over, and it's pure rivalry. I don't like anything about that town. So I hope he's also just from the Canton area, because I can stand for no positive mentions of Canton, Ohio.
I've lost all track of him. I just remember.
We've already dug way too far into this.
With the acoustic guitar.
I like it. No, any positive mentions of Ohio. We'll just go full 10,000 foot view. Positive Ohio is good in my book. So, okay. Speaking of positive Ohio, we're going to be talking about one of their teams today. It's all great teams in the NFL. We're talking San Francisco 49ers, Cincinnati Bengals, but we're going to get everything started with the Buffalo Bills. 13, Josh, you did the record wrong again. 13-3. So they either went 14-3 or 13-4. I don't know which one. Same offenses last year.
No, they went 13-3 because there was a fourth.
Sorry.
Thank you, Liz. Ryan, shut up. Liz. I did it right.
Josh did 16 games for a team that was not one of those teams last week. So I just assumed Josh did it wrong. Thank you, Liz. 13-3 last season. Sean McDermott is still the head coach. Ken Dorsey's still going to run the offense. Not many changes here. Josh Allen's the QB1. James Cook slides up to RB1 with Damian Harris backing him up now. Stephon Diggs, wide receiver 1, Gabe Davis, wide receiver 2, possibly a new face at wide receiver 3, Khalil Shakir. Dawson Knox is going to be the 1A at tight end because they also drafted Dalton Kincaid very high for a tight end, and we're going to call him the 1B. And if you followed any of these shows recently, we ask everybody to give us a list of their guy for the team. So Josh went with Josh Allen. It says because it says QB1, but I think it's just because they have the same name. But he also threw in that he likes James Cook.
Stand together, baby.
Exactly. I put Khalil Shakir because after the way I stand for him as a rookie, I just am happy to see him get the field. And Stephon Diggs just felt way too easy. Liz, you started with James Cook, and I think that's where the discussion needs to be with the Buffalo Bills, because you could argue that's the big change on this offense at this point is Devin Singletary, after playing out his rookie deal, moves on to the Houston Texans. And this is James Cook's team now, ? Liz?
Well, I did think it was interesting in your intro that you noted that Damian Harris would be backing Cook up. So it does seem as though the assumption is that this is Cook's backfield to own. Now, obviously, his skill set is divergent from Damian Harris's, and Damian Harris is going to work on those early downs in a short yardage capacity, probably see more goal line attempts. But Devin Singletary's 200 plus touches are now vacated. And I think while Cook won't see all of those, the majority of them are going to go his way. He was second on the team in touches with 89 attempts and 21 grabs as a rookie. It's also worth noting that the team invested a second-round pick in him, making him the third running back selected in April of last year, while Damian Harris, he got a low-risk one-year deal. So if we're looking at in terms of, financial investment, it certainly is behind Cook. And I also think that it's worth noting that Buffalo is not a run-first operation. The Bills have ranked 5th in pass rate over the past 3 seasons. And that, you're like, well, Liz, what does that matter for a running back? But James Cook is not just any running back. He, coming out of college, was lauded for his receiving skills and not just his good hands, but also his ability to run actual routes out of the slot like a receiver would. And so I think his talent in that respect, 27 receptions over 15 games in 2021 in his college career was what he could do. That wrinkle in his skill set is probably that which Buffalo is most leaning into and most aligns with their system, especially also noting, right, Nyheim Hines unfortunately won't be on the field this season either, which only adds to the volume that Cook could see from a pass catching perspective. And also, finally, you mentioned the pass catchers on this team. This is a thin receiving core, pass catching core, right? We've got Steph Diggs, best route runner in the league. Gabe Davis, well, that didn't work out like a lot of
worst route runner in the league.
Not to open any old wounds, but and then you've got 2 tight ends, one of whom is a rookie. Yeah. So I think that gives Cook some really nice upside, but you're not going to see it from volume. You're going to see it similarly to the way you might see. Now, this isn't an apples for apples comp, but those don't exist. Like Tony Pollard, right? Like Tony Pollard doesn't need to touch the ball as many times as Zeke Elliott because he's a more dynamic player who can average more yards per carry and catch than the 1B in the backfield.
Well, yeah, and when you look at Cook last year, 5.7 yards per carry, which is actually very similar. As you mentioned, it's not apples to apples, but that's what Tony Pollard was doing as a backup last year as well. So if he can keep that efficiency on limited touches, that's exactly what you want out of just about any running back in the NFL right now.
And you can get it in a top 5, top 3 offense like the Bills.
Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned, the targets. The targets are what we really want. And you guys hear it on this show all the time, just how much more important targets are for running backs than actual carries. Obviously, the more they can get, the better. And you can take a mid-tier running back and turn him into a top-tier running back. Josh, you had mentioned in the pregame that you had some stats around targets. So I'll actually kick to you on this. Josh, your mic is not working. So I'm going to.
Sorry, I had to crack open my drink, so I muted it. Sorry.
Oh, there we go. Gotcha.
Trying to be respectful. But no, so I was doing some research for my DeAndre Swift article that I'm writing for the Eagles next week. And I started looking at running backs that have 100 or more carries, quarterbacks that have 100 and more carries and how often those offenses target the running back position. Liz, you mentioned Josh Allen and this Bills offense throwing the football. Josh Allen has topped 35 pass attempts per game each of the last 3 seasons. And that number was over 38 pass attempts per game in 2021. the running back target share in this Bills offense has been 16.5, 13.5, 15.4%, 3 of the last 4 years. Last year, he targeted the running backs 20.1%, and that was on just over 35 pass attempts per game. We, as fantasy analysts, like to overanalyze everything. And I don't think that's a very inaccurate statement, right? Especially
in June and July.
Let's start paying attention to the behaviors that teams do in the offseason, right? They did not bring back Devin Singletary, who over the last 3 years has 50 or more targets in this offense. Okay. They then brought in the aforementioned Damian Harris on a low risk deal, who is not known for catching passes, and then signed Latavius Murray, who's going on his 38th team in I don't know how many years.
38.
But somehow still manages to like find ways to catch passes. He had 35 targets last year.
I was going to say he's a better pass catcher than you would think.
Yeah. So let's assume that Josh Allen throws for 36 pass attempts per game. At that rate, why would we not think that even if there's only, let's say, 16% target share to the running backs, James Cook catches 80% or sees 80% of those targets? I don't think that's that far cry when you look at this running back room right now. That's going to put him at 73 targets in this offense.
So what is that like in terms of catches per game? Because like I'm sitting here with my iPhone trying to be like, all right, so 36 times 60, 36 times 16, the 65%, let's say, I'm probably better than that, but ballpark, 2 to 3 catches per game, conservatively for James Cook. Catches. Mm-hmm. We expect him to convert in short yardage with Josh Allen as the passer, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
So if he stays healthy for 15 games, that's 45 catches.
That's nuts. Like that's,
and honestly, I would put the over on James Cook at that point.
This is a conservative estimate.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, for me, it's like you're getting him at RB 30 prices. And I feel like so much of that depressed ADP is simply because Devin Singletary was never like a top 20, top 15 running back. Like he was always just kind of like, in that like low end RB2 range, like 23 to 26 kind of area. So everybody's just kind of projecting that on James Cook. These are 2 very different running backs. Very different. James Cook is so much more dynamic with the football in his hands than Devin Singletary can ever dream of being. Simply because Singletary's not as fast. James Cook has 4.4 speed. So if we think that he can be more efficient, which he was last year, so even if he sees, let's say, 50 more carries than last year, that's still only going to put him at 135-ish carries.
Yeah.
He sees 70-plus targets. Even if he only scores 6 touchdowns, that's a top 20 running back, and you're seeing value based on his ADP.
Well, Liz gave me an idea with the 45 catches, 46 catches. If you go and look, last year there were only 13 running backs that had 45 or more catches, and all but one of them was a top 21 running back.
But I was just looking up. So, I was like looking it up right now because I was like, what is it, top? What is it? Yes.
Yeah, it took me a second there. The outlier was Rachaad White at 50 receptions, but such an ineffective offense, it was a little rough for him last year. But top 21 for every single one of them. So just again, if he can see those targets, it really, really changes the game up. Now, Liz, I had asked you guys a question before the show, and you immediately gave an answer that I didn't think would be the answer. But when I was doing my projections for this year, 3 running backs, all second-year guys, all kind of in weirdly similar situations, kind of stood out to me. And that's Brian Robinson, Rachaad White, and James Cook. Their ADPs could not be more different. So rather than doing like a would you rather, because I really just want to talk about these 3 guys, Liz, I just kind of want to like cage match these guys. How would you draft these 3 guys, and is it in line with their ADP right now?
I would draft Rachaad White and then James Cook, and then, but they're very close. And then a distant third is Brian Robinson.
Okay.
Because I like that rookie out of Kentucky there. I think that guy's going to contend. Chris Rodriguez, I believe.
Yeah. Yes. That's exactly
that to me, like just asterisk this one, that guy is a drumbeat candidate for this summer. I want to see now the camp is like up. What's the drumbeat on him? I feel like there is a Ramondre Stevenson potential in him because remember, Stevenson was like not a pass catcher. That wasn't his role. And then all of a sudden reports, it took a little bit of time. He had a really incredible preseason game. And now look, I feel like that kid who was so productive in Kentucky and who did not catch a lot of balls in college, but now the reports are that people or the coaching staff's been impressed by his pass catching skills. Just because a player hasn't done something doesn't mean they can't do it. That goes for everybody else as well. So, but yes, that was a long-winded answer. Those are the three: White, Cook, and then Robinson.
Well, first and foremost, how much of a slap in the face would it be to Antonio Gibson if you're like, this guy didn't catch a lot of balls in college, but we're just going to go ahead and throw it to him anyway and still just find a way to ignore Antonio Gibson.
It's going to take a minute. It's going to take a minute.
I was going to say, isn't Gibson heading into year 4 anyway? This is a contract year for him. Yeah. I've been on this train for a while. They drafted Chris Rodriguez as a potential replacement so they can move on from Antonio Gibson. So it would not surprise me if they do start trying to incorporate Rodriguez into more of a pass catching back to complement Brian Robinson.
Josh, do you have the same feelings on those second-year running backs?
No, I'm very out on Rachaad White. Very out. I would much rather take
about his efficiency? Are you worried about
I don't see it. The Bucs offense is, to put it lightly, dog shit. And their offensive line, just not it. Outside of Tristan Wirfs, I have zero faith in any of those offensive linemen. Baker Mayfield has done this since he came into the league. It's just been peak and then valley. And I'm not talking below sea level in Florida Valley. I'm talking buried city of Atlantis Valley. It's bad. So yeah, I'm out on Rachaad White. And I can see the argument for him because, again, right now there is nobody. But just wait, because the next couple weeks, Keyshawn Vaughn, Ryan, your boy, is going to start tricking up.
Hype. It's what I've been waiting on for years now.
That camp hype is going to start going up, and it's already started today. So yeah, give me James Cook. I think too many people.
Now, what about Robinson versus White though, Josh?
I would probably still take White simply because I will value the pass catching more. So because Robinson's not going to catch back.
This isn't the Tampa Bay show, but Liz, I'm going to actually give you some time to talk about Rachaad White after I explain their ADP here, because in my head, they were very equal. Obviously, Liz, you even said you would put White and Cook close to each other. White right now, according to Fantasy Pros, is 61st overall, whereas Cook is all the way down at 82nd overall. We're talking more than 2 full rounds separation. And then you guys both don't like Brian Robinson, but he's another 2 full rounds as the RB36 at 106. So I guess, Liz, why are you in on White, still have him as your one? Obviously, there's value to be had in Cook 2 full rounds later, but talk positively about Rachaad White, because I don't think we've heard enough of that.
I mean, it's a volume argument, right? White split work with Fournette to the tune of over 15 touches per game last season. And he was just one of 4 running backs to hit a threshold above 11 carries and 3.5 catches per contest from weeks 10 through 18. Those other running backs who were with him, Christian McCaffrey, Austin Eckler, and James Conner, they were all top 20 fantasy producers at the position. So I like that floor, and I understand that the efficiency is going to be, to quote Josh, likely dog shit. But at the end of the day, we know that White can do both things. We know he can catch passes, and we know that he can run between the tackles. So there's a duality to his skill set that is, in my opinion, better than Cook's. And if he's going to get that volume, he will make up the efficiency deficiency, if you will, in overall numbers. Probably not going to have the splash games that Cook will have, but he's a higher floor option to me, and that's why I have him ranked, I think, RB24. He's on that RB2, RB3 cusp.
I say you have him right below his ADP then, so even still, you're giving a little bit of caution, if you will, because right now the last thing we want to see out of Rachaad White is the ADP creep up. But if we keep hearing positive Keyshawn Vaughn reports, that's not going to happen either.
You think Keyshawn Vaughn, the kid who started at Illinois and then went to Vandy?
Yeah. I fell in love with him coming out of the draft. And so I was trying to trade up for him in a draft that Josh and we're in for rookies. And Josh even cautioned me against it. And then the trade fell through, and he's like, best thing that ever happened to you was that trade falling through. So
I remember the hype in the moment. He was supposed to be Arians' guy in this backfield.
Yep.
Well, I think that was before they brought in Leonard Fournette too.
Yes. Well, yes, because when he was drafted, Uncle Lenny wasn't on the squad when he was drafted.
He was still in the process of losing his job to James Robinson at that point. So, Josh, you have Josh Allen as your QB1 this year, huh?
I do, yeah. I didn't really dive too much into it. I just said the simple answer. When you look at all of the elite quarterbacks, he has the highest potential for elite passing numbers. And by that, I mean like 4,500 plus passing yards, 35 plus passing touchdowns, on top of the potential for 700 plus rushing yards and 6 plus rushing touchdowns. I don't think any other quarterback in fantasy football right now that has that potential, or even that already existing on their resume. So I think your next closest in that argument is Jalen Hurts, but Jalen Hurts still needs to take that leap, in my opinion. The passing was great last year. It was very efficient, but the volume still needs to go up, in my opinion.
I think it's a
and that's
fair
coming
point.
from an Eagles fan.
Josh, this is something we've talked about on the mock draft show quite often. You're talking about guys like Hurts, obviously Mahomes, and then Josh Allen. In the current landscape of fantasy football, where so many analysts typically would tell you quarterback late, quarterback late, quarterback late, are you paying up to get Josh Allen? And Liz, I'm going to come to you with this too. I already saw you shaking your head. But Josh, are you paying up to get Josh Allen?
Yeah, there's only 3 quarterbacks this year that I would legitimately pay up for in drafts, and that's Mahomes, Hurts, and Josh Allen, because I truly believe that those 3 separate themselves from the pack.
So Liz, are you in agreement with that? That's kind of what I was taking from your head motion there. Is that is this the year to pay up for quarterback if you're getting one of the elite guys?
I agree that I'm probably only paying up for one of those 3. But also, I was trying to pull a stat about how ADP shifts have happened. And like, it's wonderful that all of these analysts are like, oh yeah, you can't wait on quarterback anymore because the elite guys produce so much more than like the mid-tier guys. But that's creating deficiencies at other positions. And no one is talking about like attacking that value then, like, so in 2023, a quarterback was drafted by ADP over rounds 1 and 2. 3 quarterbacks were drafted last year, which is up from 1 over the 3 previous years, right? You have to imagine that's been Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
That's been up. Meanwhile, so from rounds 1 through 8, 11 quarterbacks were drafted. According to current ADP, 11 quarterbacks are expected to be drafted. And that's 1 through 8. Rounds 1 and 2, current ADP suggests 3 quarterbacks. 22, 1 quarterback in rounds 1 and 2. And in 2021, 1 quarterback in rounds 1 and 2. So like the market is getting smarter and the trend is becoming less enticing.
Yeah. So with that though, I agree with everything you're saying, that there's created value at other positions, but you're also by the 8th round, you no longer have your choice. You're taking what's left over.
But is it hold on. That's like, yes, but also isn't your job, if you're going to win leagues or talk about winning leagues, to find the guy that is the next guy?
I love it.
Like, you don't have to do it at maybe at quarterback. Listen, there are professional scouts who have the bed a million times on finding franchise quarterbacks. So it is completely acceptable as a fantasy enthusiast to be like, you know what? That position is really complicated. So I'm going to pay up for Josh Allen and try to find my value elsewhere. Try to find this year's Tony Pollard, this year's Ramondre Stevenson, now that the dead zone is very much more alive than it has been in previous years, right? But it's also okay to say, Deshaun Watson is an interesting guy who's being drafted outside of the top 8.
Yeah. Maybe
that's my value. Like maybe I get him in round 7-ish. I'm not looking at current ADP.
No, but you're hitting exactly what I was wondering here is, so for me, I'm someone who used to wait till double-digit rounds, and it sounds like I maybe need to at least adjust my slider a little bit to get one of the guys towards the
Unless you're happy with Kirk Cousins, who despite him being a massive dork, remains one of the highest floor options in the game.
Absolutely. He's QB 12 every week. That's his floor. Yep. That's his ceiling. He's QB 12.
Made a nice living being QB 12,
Right?
Damn right. Yeah, I fault nothing with what Kirk Cousins has done throughout his career. No, I absolutely love that. For me, it's Khalil Shakir, and that's simply because I just want to see this kid succeed. 5th round pick coming out of Boise. great route runner. He has a chance to slide in as the third receiver in this. He's going to have a little bit of competition. I think it would just be fun to see him play well. Joe's sleeper is James Cook, coming off the board as the RB30, and his IDP player of note is Matt Milano, tackle machine, never leaves the field. Josh, go ahead and intro the segment you created for Liz here.
All right, so we're doing bottomless bets with Liz. So
like
what I like,
but better.
Exactly. See, I'm like, I work every weekend, so I don't get to like enjoy bottomless anything. It sucks. So I said, you know what? We're tearing a segment to this, and we're gonna have some fun. So Liz, your favorite Bills-related bets on whichever sportsbook you prefer.
Well, it's Caesars, obviously. And I did not, these are not my favorites. I just felt like these were the ones that were the most interesting. I think over 10.5 wins is interesting because we noted the 13-3 record.
Yeah.
So there's, and we look at the rest of that division, and Miami has one of the best defenses in the league now, at least via the work that they've put into the back half, the other side of the ball, right? The Jets, you have to assume, have improved. Maybe not. But there's certainly investments on improvement there.
A big one today.
But even if the Dolphins and the Jets improve, like, is 11 wins, which is 2 fewer than last year, still out of the question for Josh Allen? I think ultimately the answer is defenses win championships. I love the Milano pick, but Buffalo has a top 5 to maybe 7 ranked defense. And a lot of this is like, I feel like you're going to bet on the health of Von Miller and Tre'Davious White bouncing back from the ACL that obviously kind of zapped a lot of his power last season. But one of the best safety tandems in the league, right? I like the Leonard Floyd signing. I feel like Buffalo's defense is really what's going to get them over the 10.5 hump. And that's why it's an interesting one to discuss.
And I feel like that number may have been set so low because there were questions about that defense with the loss of the defensive coordinator and then so many new faces. So I think you probably hit it perfectly on the head there, is that people are doubting the defense maybe to their own peril at this point.
Josh, are you going over under 10.5 wins? I'm curious because it's a tough one.
I was going to say, yeah, I think that's probably the perfect spot because when you look at the improvements the Dolphins made, when you look at, obviously the Jets bringing in Aaron Rodgers and the hype that's surrounding him, like this division got better. And, for this team that I believe they've been like 12 plus wins the last three years, like you're like, wait, this feels like a trap, right? Like what's going on here? But I think their line is probably 11. And I think it really is simply because this division just got better. Plain and simple.
Did we not say the same thing about the AFC West last year?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we were
right.
Oh, we were all we had like all 4 teams making the playoffs.
Some idiot said all 4 teams would make the playoffs.
So I mean, that's like we have to
look at this, Webster.
A large part of our job is looking at trends, and so I was thinking that's why I picked this prop to discuss, because this is like, I mean, how much are you buying into it? Which trends are you seeing? And like, I don't know. I was at the Super Bowl when the Rams won. It is very difficult for me to bet against Von Miller.
Yeah.
Go ahead. ACLs though in your 30s. That's
never a fun thing.
You got it. Yeah. I mean, again, yes, there's all of these asterisks, but I would bet that the Bills win 11 games more than I would assume that they only 100%. Manage 10.
I think that's a great point. So
I agree.
The other one was Josh Allen under 32.5 passing touchdowns. I mentioned how thin the receiving core is. Bottom 10 ranked offensive line. That could lead to more scrambling from Allen, even though trying to get rid of that, like, you can't invest. We all know that, like, mobile quarterbacks don't get offensive lines because they, quote, don't need them. Yeah. And he's got a bottom 5 strength of schedule. So I know I said I think they'd win 11 games, but also I think a lot of that production is going to come from Josh Allen having to put the team on his back and make it happen with his legs.
And I think that makes a lot of sense. It's certainly, again, not apples to apples, but we saw a similar scenario last year where Daniel Jones rushed for so many touchdowns that it took away from his passing touchdown number. And we could see something like that. Even a 3 touchdown swing from what we've recently seen from Allen would make that under hit. So.
Although if your guy Shakir happens, then,
He better. No, I'm joking.
I have Josh Allen with 34 passing touchdowns in my projections. So I would take the over there. I mean, even if we assume that Dalton Kincaid, becomes that like big slot that we want him to be, like we know Gabe Davis is good for probably 2-3 touchdown games this year, and that's about it.
Yeah.
So Stephon Diggs should be a gimme for 10 plus, just based on his usage and targets in the end zone itself, not even just the red zone. But even if Kincaid falls off, Dawson Knox has scored 15 touchdowns the last 2 years. So if Kincaid isn't a thing, Knox is still a pretty solid fallback option. And then from there, it's, does Shakir take a leap? Who else do they have in the wide receiver pecking order? What does James Cook do from an efficiency standpoint? Because of his speed, he has that breakaway ability that he can turn a 5-yard dump off into a 60-yard touchdown catch. So
Josh, write these down because I would love to come back after the season.
Oh, they're on the show sheet. Oh yeah,
all right.
We've got it.
Let's see, because I don't think you're wrong. Again, I wasn't picking bets where I'm like, yeah. Also,
create the discussion. I love
the Bills and the 49ers and the Bengals. These are some of the most bet teams. So if y'all are betting on these teams, find a different strategy. You got to bet on teams that aren't matched with as much.
I love it.
And the last one quickly, Damian Harris over 550 and a half rushing yards. Again, we know that he's going to work in some capacity. Let's assume 10 carries per week at 4.5 yards per carry. That's 45 rushing yards per week. His career YPC is 4.7. Even at 13 games, at that average is 585 rushing yards. I've done the math.
I think it works out quite well. And it also goes to the story you're telling where, the pass catchers might not be there. So they're going to lean on 2 running backs a little bit more this season to where even 10 carries per week could end up being conservative. So
I think Harris is a solid value. I think he's being considered an afterthought in a lot of fantasy drafts. And this is a guy that it's not exciting, right? He's never been an exciting player, right? He's what is that phrase? Like, something of none, like a master of none.
Oh, jack of all trades,
but a master of none. That's very much his skill set, right? So I think that he does offer. He's like the Kirk Cousins of running backs,
No higher compliment.
But he doesn't get the same amount of money, and I don't want to have that conversation.
No, we will not have. That's a argument for Twitter to have in perpetuity. We're going to move on to the Bengals. The issue when you get to these good teams is we'll spend way too much time talking about them. So the Bengals went 12-4 last year. Same head coach, Zach Taylor, and Zach Taylor also calls the plays. Joe Burrow is the QB1. Joe Mixon is the RB1. Rookie Chase Brown should be backing him up. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd all back, and Irv Smith slides into the tight end spot after leaving Minnesota while Hayden Hurst has moved on to Carolina. So with the Bengals, my guys, Josh has Jamar Chase. Liz and I both have Joe Mixon. So Josh, I'm going to let you get started with a little Jamar Chase talk.
All right. So I did again. Chase is my wide receiver 1 in my projections this year. Over Justin Jefferson, over Cooper Kupp, Diggs, Adams, Hill, all those guys.
It's not outlandish.
I don't think it is. But here's some things that I think might surprise some people. Did you know that Jamar Chase led the NFL last year in targets per game at 11.2?
He missed 4 or 5 games last year.
And he missed 4 games. Yeah.
Well, he missed 4 and then the team missed 1.
Yes. Yeah. So his yards per reception, his rookie season, when he won Rookie of the Year and set the rookie receiving yards number, was at 18. That fell to 12 yards per reception last year.
I thought you were going to say 16. I did not realize it was 18. Okay.
Yeah, it was 18. But here's the fun thing. When you look at him only playing 12 games last year, he had the same number of end zone targets as last year's wide receiver 1, Justin Jefferson, but 3 more touchdowns on those end zone targets.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah. Justin Jefferson does not catch touchdowns in the end zone, which I know is kind of a weird thing to say because he, again, was a wide receiver 1 last year. So what I'm buying into is this connection between Jamar Chase and Burrow. When you look at Chase and his target share from last year, and when he was on the field, that target share was 6th in the NFL at 29.3%, which is a massive uptick from just over 23% in his rookie year.
How insane that 5 other people beat 30% target share last year. Good Lord.
Yeah, that's wild. If you don't believe me, it's on playerprofiler.com.
I believe you. It's crazy.
But like, and where I'm loving Jamar Chase is the touchdowns, right? In 29 career games, Jamar Chase has scored 22 touchdowns. That is a pretty elite level like percentage there. That's better than Jefferson, who only scores a touchdown every 2 games. That's better than Cooper Kupp, who scored 46 in 80 games, has only 2 seasons out of 6 where he's top 10 or more touchdowns. And that's even better than Stephon Diggs, who, yes, has scored 10 or more in the last 2 years, but over his career, 59 in 119 games. So when you factor in what should be a better yards per reception from last year, coming back from, starting the year without the hip injury, the elite touchdown upside, and the elite target share, I have him as my wide receiver 1 going into this year. So that's why he is my guy, because I don't see a lot of people putting Jamar Chase in that overall wide receiver 1 market.
I love it. I love the stats. My only caution is how fluky touchdowns and end zone efficiency as Davante Adams can be. And I don't know if I want to draft. I mean, because potentially, would you draft if you had the 2nd overall pick? Would you draft Jamar Chase?
Oh, I'd still take a running back, because
you would take who at number 2? You would take
I would still
take.
take. I would probably take Eckler because he is my RB1, but it's very close between him and CMC. But I still value that multifaceted running back over the elite wide receiver.
3rd pick in a draft.
So if we assume that Jefferson and Eckler are 1 and 2,
we're going to assume CMC and Eckler are 1 and 2. That's consensus.
Then I would take Chase.
Okay,
I would take Chase over J. Jeff and Kupp.
Yeah, I would, because and again, it boils down to A, he's my wide receiver 1, but B, I also know I'm not getting him on the turn back in the 2nd.
Hundo, yes.
Yeah. So
I just wanted to know because last year I took Jefferson 2nd overall, mostly because I didn't want to take Austin because it's too hard for me.
Yeah, that it's a little bit more complicated for you than most.
It's just a different thing. So I wasn't doing the show with him last year, so it was different. So I took Justin Jefferson, and I was like, "Wow, this is great. This is great content because I am now learning as I go along." Because he was pacing ahead of, all of the receivers. I think ultimately on a points per game basis, a fantasy points per game basis, I think Eckler out-edged him at least in ESPN standard scoring, which is 1 full point PPR. But I don't know. Anyway, I love that you're backing it up.
Well, I think Kupp actually caught Jefferson when it was all said and done. He just only played the 9 games.
Yeah, he had a higher points per game. But the one thing I did find too, Chase ranked 1st last year in expected fantasy points per game. So I mean, and that tells you there were even some missed opportunities where, again, the missed games as well. But we talk about how great this offense is. I mean, no Chase, guess what? You got Higgins and Boyd. And I know you guys will, we'll get to Joe Mixon here in a little bit, but there's still no more dominant threat on this offense to me than Jamar Chase. He is that freaking good.
Oh, I think, that I don't know that there's much debate there whatsoever. Yeah, exactly. Let's move on to Mixon, because I know Josh's take on Mixon, because we've been having this fight for weeks. It's volume versus efficiency. So Liz, do you see him getting back up above 4 yards per carry, or do you think it even matters?
I don't care.
All right.
I don't care. The Bengals let Samaje Perine walk. They waited until the 5th round to add Chase Brown. Mixon's he's just 27 years old. I know he feels 35, but he's still only 27, and he's the primary ball carrier in a top 5 offense. He's managed over 16 carries per game throughout his entire career, while also clearing 1,200 scrimmage yards in 4 of those 6 pro efforts. The knock against him, right, he doesn't catch balls. The receiving ceiling is way too low. But then he's managed career catches in back-to-back seasons.
Yeah.
He's been inside the top 12 in fantasy points per game since Joe Burrow joined the team. I feel like it's not exciting. It's not fun, but it is really valuable. And if you want to prioritize another position like a wide receiver or even a quarterback, depending on where you are in the snake, then I think that he can be a serviceable RB1 at a pretty discounted ADP, given all of the other, all of the floor that he presents with.
4th round pick, depending on your league size, whether you need to take him early or late, but very, very late rounds for a guy who is going to lead his team in carries, touches from that position. Josh, do you care to disagree with Liz Loza? Because I certainly wouldn't. But
I mean, look, the last 4 seasons, he's averaged 4.1 yards per carry or fewer. I get the spike in the targets last year, which, again, was great. It was a career high for him at 26 years old. We're going into a year older. And I feel like, again, it's easy to scoff at, like, oh, well, he's only 27. This is like his 7th season. Like, there's a lot of tread on these tires because he has been the lead back, do-it-all guy for the Bengals since then. And he's not as big as Derrick Henry. So this is kind of like, all right, we're starting to see him slowly wear down, and it's showing up in these efficiency numbers. The spike last year for me in the targets, I think really was it was Jamar Chase being out those 4 games, right? So if Chase plays 16, we saw Higgins leave, I think it was 3 games last year within the first 10 snaps of the game. So like if you have a fully healthy season from both of those guys, I don't think those targets are there from Joe Mixon.
And Mixon, I mean, we're still talking 75 targets, though. It's not like that's going to get cut in half. And
again, like I'm not saying he's going to dip down to 40. I'm not saying that. I think let me actually see where I have him on projected targets. So I have him at 58 targets and 218 rush attempts, which again, not very sexy, but running backs ahead of him are going to get hurt. So if he ends up playing 15 games, which I think is still very much in the realm of possibility, barring anything drastic, he'll still probably end up a top 16 running back. I just feel like right now you're kind of drafting him at a ceiling, in my opinion.
I don't think he's being drafted at a ceiling at all. I think he is like an incredible value. Like he's going to clear 200 carries, even on just 15 games. And even if he catches 3 balls a game, like what is that? That is 40. That's again, 45 balls. Like that's, I mean, for your
realistically, then how many touchdowns do you think he scores?
9. I haven't projected
total or rushing.
Total.
Okay. Well,
but that's the point I was going to bring up is in this offense, he has scored 25 touchdowns over the last 2 seasons. So there's such an upside
16 of them
there.
came 2 years ago.
So 9 came last year. 9 is not a bad number, bro.
Okay, Josh, I love this, by the way. I love that. First of all, Ryan, go get him. Number 2, if you had to choose without looking at your rankings, I just looked at mine.
Okay. All right. All's not fair in love and war. Okay.
If you're choosing between Joe Mixon and Najee Harris, who are you picking?
I do have Najee higher.
She said, "Don't look at your rankings."
No, but
I know that off the top of my head.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I have those 2 guys, 12 and 13, which is why I looked at my rankings.
Okay. Yeah, I think looking at my rankings, I believe I have Najee at 9. No, let me check that.
There's 7 picks.
I actually have him at 8.
ADP. So.
I have him at 8 because I do have him at 297 rush attempts. I'm not buying into the whole Jaylen Warren hype at all.
Oh, that's fine, but like, I want to look at, now you have caused me to question Najee Harris's efficiency metrics, which we can do on another episode.
And that's fine. And again, I'm kind of with you on the efficiency side with Najee, but I also think that the way that the Steelers play football is very different from the way that the Bengals play football. Yeah. Like the Steelers, they have 3 pretty good wide receivers, and you won't find a bigger Deontay Johnson fan than me, but he's not in the category, in the stratosphere of T. Higgins or even Jamar Chase.
Sure.
So that alone is going to drive so much more into the rushing volume for Najee. Like I have Najee with almost 80 more carries than Joe Mixon because I have the Bengals throwing the football over 600 times.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So.
Sure.
All right, guys, I'm going to keep us moving with the Bengals. So Joe's sleeper, Chase Brown, RB63. I think he's just looking at the potential of stepping into that Samaje Perine role, his IDP player of note. Joe's favorite phrase on the show when it comes to IDP players, contract year, it's Trey Hendricks off the defensive line. And we're going to go back to Liz's bottomless bets. Go ahead and talk about your favorite bets related to the Cincinnati Bengals.
Bengals over under 11.5 wins. Ryan, I want your opinion first. Instead of me just saying what
No, you're fine. I think the division is tough. They won 13 last year. I still don't believe in the offensive line improvements until I see it on the field. I would probably go under with the Bengals.
And Josh?
The line was 11.5?
Yeah.
11.5 wins.
Yeah, no, I think I'm still going to go over. I still think they're head and shoulders the best team in that division.
Ryan, you and I are in locked up. I have under 11.5 wins. A lot of the same things. But here is the biggest stat. I am leaning into Lamar Jackson staying on the field this season. And here was the stat that I pulled that swayed me to the under. Because again, this is a close one. These are why I've picked this one. Burrow is 3-0 versus the Ravens when anyone but Lamar Jackson starts, and 1-2 in his career versus Baltimore when Jackson starts.
Wow.
I am leaning in to Lamar this season. I understand the durability. It's not about him getting paid. I just feel like it's going to happen. There's a new offensive coordinator. There's things that are changing. I think he's going to stay on the field. And to me, that means that Joe is going to take a couple L's that he didn't anticipate. So I'll take the under overall.
And we should see that Ravens defense start to come to fruition. All these home runs they've hit on the defensive side of the ball of the draft, we should start to see that come to fruition over these next couple of seasons. So I like it.
Yeah. All right. The other one is Joe Mixon over 6.5 rushing touchdowns. I think we already talked about that.
Way over for me on that one. So.
Yes. T Higgins over or under 1,000.5 receiving yards.
I think I would go over. I have been in a love-hate relationship with myself and T Higgins this entire offseason, where I got really down on him last year, but then the more you dig into the numbers, he's way better than what he kind of looked like in certain games last year. But I just think on sheer passing volume, he's probably over as long as he stays.
He's also cleared 1,000 receiving yards in back-to-back seasons. Yeah. So a three-peat, especially in this contract year for him, makes a bunch of sense. With Chase on the field, Higgins has averaged 4.7 receptions per game and 67.3 receiving yards per game. When Chase is out, that number jumps to 6.5 receptions per game and 92.7 receiving yards per game. Obviously, sample size is small. If it were larger, that number would come down a little bit. But if Chase stays healthy for the entire year and Higgins maintains his 67 receiving yards per game average for 15 games, which he did while Chase was healthy all of last year.
That's that's 1,003, right? Or something like that.
Still hits the over.
I love it. The math.
I'm trying to do that math. I'm like, wait a second, because we talk all the time about running backs going over 1,000 yards, and they're like, it's only 60 something a game. Yep. Now there's that 17th game, so it sways it a little bit, but that's so funny.
The math is mathin'. That's what it really comes down to. All right, we're going to finish up the show with the San Francisco 49ers, 13-4 last year. Again, no changes. Once you start getting into these good teams, there's usually not a lot of changes. Kyle Shanahan's the coach. Kyle Shanahan's calling the plays. Quarterbacks, Josh, this might be the first time we've had to go 3 deep. QB1.
I had to, because it would be damn funny to do it.
QB1A, Brock Purdy. 1B, Trey Lance. 1C, Sam Darnold. I think we can firmly put a 2 or a 3 there. Christian McCaffrey is going to be the RB1. Elijah Mitchell backing him up. I would flip these, and I'm going to because I'm the host. Wide receiver 1 is Brandon Aiyuk. Wide receiver 2 is Deebo Samuel. Wide receiver 3 is Jawan Jennings. Tight end 1, George Kittle. We're going to go with my guys, and we all agree. And since Liz is the smartest one in the room, Liz, talk to us about Brandon Aiyuk.
I hate this team. I hate the whole thing. He's coming off of a career season, right? 78 grabs, 1,015 yards, 8 touchdowns. He led the 49ers in catches, targets, and receiving yards. Cleared 1,000 receiving yards for the first time in 3 seasons since he was drafted in 2020. He had 3 games with 20 or more fantasy points, but then 6 single-digit games. I think volume is going to be the most frustrating piece of this offense. And if you are drafting Aiyuk, who right now I believe is like the 35th wide receiver off the board, you're going to get some weeks where he gives you those 20 plus points. And then you're going to get some dud weeks. And that is the way that this offense is going to roll, because outside of Christian McCaffrey, whose connection with Kyle Shanahan is literally generational, he is the engine through which this entire flipping operation runs. Everything else is a question mark. Deebo's health, Deebo's conditioning. Like, I know that we make best shape of his life type jokes, but like, that is something to consider. Deebo looked at the tape and was like, I was dusty AF, and now I got to the gym and I'm pounding my Celsius. Like, all of that is happening for him. I don't know, right? Like, I don't know. When I look at the ADP, Pittman, if I'm looking at like Aiyuk is being drafted around the same time as Michael Pittman and Brandon Cooks. Yeah. I look at those three options and I think, well, I want a part of Kyle Shanahan's offense more than anything that Mike McCarthy's attached to. Or I do think it's a good year in Indianapolis, but it's a starter season. It's not like anything's not been established, right? So I'll take Brandon Aiyuk. If he's my wide receiver 3, I like the upside and the potential. I don't want to have to rely on him for floor, though.
So we're going to play a quick game that we invented here on the show. But first, shout out to Sam Darnold for watching the show. I was shocked to see the comment. I don't know who went and created that profile so fast. Or
all about it.
Yeah, no New Jersey, by the way, bro. Still in Carolina.
That's amazing, plain and simple. So Liz, you may have probably never heard of this game because we invented it in our show. Would you rather, where we're going to give you options and you just choose between the two of them. It's really simple. Can't believe nobody came up with it before. Here's my issue. I think Josh is alluding to that we should play Would You Rather with Brandon Aiyuk, but we all love Brandon Aiyuk and there are some interesting names around him. I think it's more important to play around Deebo Samuel at wide receiver 16. And it just so happens that this plays perfectly into a user question of Chris Olave and DK Metcalf. So those three, Deebo Samuel, Chris Olave, DK Metcalf, are all going right next to each other. So I guess my question is, with the non-dusty Deebo and our love of Brandon Aiyuk, how far does his ADP need to fall? So I'm going to start with a few players ahead of him, and let's just start with T. Higgins because we spent the show talking about him. Liz, would you rather have T. Higgins or Deebo Samuel at roughly the same ADP?
T. Higgins.
Josh?
I hate this. I'd rather have T. Higgins, but I do have Deebo higher in my rankings.
We're going to talk about your rankings after the show. Chris Olave or Deebo Samuel? Liz?
Chris Olave. He's like a top 15 guy, and I have Deebo just outside my top 15.
Okay. Josh?
Yeah, this game is already making me realize I need to readjust my projections because, again, I have Deebo ahead of Olave, and I would still take Olave 10 times out of 10 over Deebo. So, yeah.
DK Metcalf, Liz, or Deebo?
DK Metcalf. I have him top 13.
That one I would take Deebo over.
Okay,
DK.
so that's interesting because for me, these are all home runs. But now when we get below here, there's one that I don't even need to ask myself. But let's start with the one just below Deebo Samuel. 3 picks apart, Deebo Samuel or Amari Cooper. Liz, where do you stand on that Cleveland offense?
Oh my God. I have them very close. I think Deebo over the course of his career has offered more upside, and Amari Cooper is like the silver lining for Amari Cooper is you know what you're getting. This is it. Like that was a career year for him. I don't see him exceeding it. What he did manage to do that Deebo didn't was stay healthy. So I will take Deebo and know that I'm going to have some bottom games.
See, what's funny is I'm down on both of them, but I would also go Deebo here, Josh.
Yeah, I'm going to go Deebo too. I have them back to back in my rankings. I have Deebo 12, Amari Cooper 13. But I do want to bring this up because I saw this tweet yesterday. It was from John Daigle from 4for4 Football. So when they bringing up Brock Purdy as, it presumed QB1 here, 6 games had CMC, Deebo, George Kittle, and Aiyuk on the field together with Brock Purdy. Here were their target shares. George Kittle, 11.5%. Brandon Aiyuk, 16.1%. CMC, 21.6%. And Deebo Samuel, 25.5%. Again, very small sample size, but this is kind of what their their offense is. It's the short, it's the dink and dunk for the young quarterback to not have to make a lot of progressions, just get rid of the ball quickly. That favors Deebo and CMC.
Yeah.
We get another year in this system. Maybe that changes, or maybe it stays the same because they're trying to protect Purdy's elbow. So we could end up seeing more of the same offense. There's just so many variables. And Liz, I'm with you. I hate this freaking team. I don't want to project them anymore. They suck. It's the most head-scratching thing ever.
You and I have been in lockstep most of the show, which just warms my heart because it tells me I'm on the side of right and Josh is on the side of wrong. But this is
what else is new?
This is a question for our budding relationship, Liz. Deebo Samuel or Keenan Allen?
I think I literally have them within. I'm gonna be a coward and say Keenan Allen.
That is not a coward. That is the right answer. By a lot. I love him. Gosh.
This is another one where I would not go with my projections and take Keenan Allen because I do have Allen under Deebo in my projections. So I got to kind of rework that a little bit.
I need to throw in.
I'm glad we've done this show because I have a lot of work to do now on my projections. So thank you.
There's one last question I want to ask Liz just on the Brandon Aiyuk thing. You mentioned like we all put him as our guy and Joe even picked him as his sleeper at wide receiver 33 and Deebo's ADP is much higher as you pointed out. Where does Aiyuk fall in your rankings, Liz?
He's inside my top 30. Like that's why I'm saying like he's being drafted outside of the top 30.
Oh, we talked about that. My apologies.
Pittman Cook's range, right? But I think there's value to be had there. And so that's why, and I love the point you made, Josh. Like, even though you've been kind of a pain in my ass this whole show, I love the point you made though about protecting Purdy's elbow and maybe we get him to grow. And like, if the YPR or the ADOT can like increase, then Aiyuk certainly becomes more and more interesting, particularly at where he's being drafted.
So and that's the fun thing about this offense. It literally is built on guys that get yards after the catch.
That's it.
CMC
it's a yak
great
offense.
at it. Deebo is great at it. Even Brandon Aiyuk is great at it.
Well, I was gonna say, and that was
they
one
just
of the big
need to
things
get
for
him
Aiyuk.
in space. Like when you saw Jimmy Garoppolo leading this offense, who has the arm strength of a toddler. Like these guys were stretching the field. They were getting down the field because their ability after the catch. They weren't doing that as much last year, even though they were still running basically the same offense. A lot of short throws and just letting the guys do their jobs.
Well, they have the right
I think
team
we're
to
going to
do
get
that.
back to that this year, where these guys are going to do their jobs. They're going to get a lot of yards after the catch. It's going to be interesting to watch how that target share shakes out.
So, Liz, this kind of goes in with one of your bets because you also mentioned Elijah Mitchell, and I feel like nobody spends enough time talking about Elijah Mitchell because Christian McCaffrey's there. So I want to quickly throw in Joe's IDP players, Javon Hargrave, mainly because there's so much to deal with on that defense. Javon Hargrave will never see a double team, and so you can expect a little bit of production. But Liz, he's a part of your bottomless bets. But let's just talk about Elijah Mitchell in general because there's not enough positive mentions of him, and you seem to have one.
Well, he was really I think he has like a YPC of over 6 last year when he was running in relief of CMC or sharing the field with CMC, but his efficiency metrics are pretty solid. Again, leaning to the point that like Kyle Shanahan has a type and Elijah Mitchell is that type. He's just not CMC. And I obviously injuries have been a little bit difficult, but Mitchell has averaged nearly 60 rushing yards per game when sharing the backfield with Christian McCaffrey from weeks 10 to 18. Now that isn't an 8-game sample size, unfortunately, because he missed weeks 13 to 17. So it's just like that's cut in half. So you only have a 4-game sample size, but still averaging 60 rushing yards per game while sharing with CMC. I don't know if I'd expect that every week, but that's an interesting number where we can start projecting from. Also, in terms of splits, he averaged nearly 10 carries per game when he was sharing the field with Christian McCaffrey, who averaged 10.5 carries per game. So just under, because McCaffrey saw all of the passing downs work, right? Yeah. Like everything through the air, he sucked up the targets. So I think from a rushing perspective in an offense, and I know we sound like we sound like a broken record, but like that relies on Yak and that relies getting players in space. And we know that Mitchell has that capacity, and we know that he has incredible efficiency metrics because of it. I feel like if anything were to happen to McCaffrey, which is not impossible given his durability history, Mitchell slides into an incredible position and also can get you awesome yard per carry average and yak average because of the offense he's running in. And he's going completely undrafted because people are like, he's hurt all the time. He burnt me. He was a nobody anyway. He was a plug and play, and all of that recency bias is one heck of an influence. And so he's dropping. So if I'm looking at like a late round throw a dart at guy, it is absolutely Mitchell, who I think will probably go over his prop in Vegas, like not to move on, but just
no, this, I was literally about to tongue in cheek ask you. So do you think he'll maybe rush for 560 or 76 or more yards?
Does 580 rushing yards seem crazy?
No, not even a little bit, especially with the 60-yard per game stat you threw out there. That was mind blowing. I knew he was high efficiency. I didn't realize the yardage totals were that high.
Like 10 games at 60 rushing yards a game, and he's hit the over on this. So if you can assume or project 600 rushing yards for Elijah Mitchell in this offense and a moderate amount of receiving work, then I don't know what he's free.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I don't think that he sees really any receiving work, honestly. I mean, just last year, he only had
CMC were to go out.
If CMC goes out, then yeah. But I also think that a lot of that is going to be Kyle Juszczyk. They'll use him more in that sort of pass-catching back.
See, I've fallen for that trap before. He ends up just being boom and bust games. And
of course he's going to have boom or bust games. But yeah, Elijah Mitchell should be every 0 RB truther's like dream running back in the late rounds, because that's exactly what you want.
Well done.
You want guys that are set up to be explosive if given the opportunity to start multiple weeks. And that's exactly what Elijah Mitchell is. If anything, God forbid, were to happen to CMC this year, miss a game, 2 games, even 6 games, you've got league-winning weeks from Elijah Mitchell on his resume. Like, it's there. 6.2 yards per carry last year, averages over 77 yards per game in his short career. Like, even if you only get 8 games out of him this year, that's going to put you pretty close to that prop. So,
and forget that for a second. Like, maybe you just draft him and reach early so that you have trade leverage against the CMC manager later in the season.
And keep in mind, when we say reach early, it's not even like you have to go that far out. There's a ton of value there. Liz, I'll let you continue with the other 2 bets.
I think I took the over on 10.5 wins. It is really, really close, but
so that was my ponderance, because we don't love the team. You literally mentioned it as soon as it started, but it's also a division that could easily be beat up on. Like, you're possibly a split with Seattle, but what Rams team do you expect to show up? It should be 2 wins against Arizona.
I mean, they were 13-4 in 2022 with Brock Purdy.
That's true.
They played 4 quarterbacks last year. Yeah.
Okay.
And now they've got CMC, and they still have a top 5 defense.
Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see how Steve Wilkes calls plays versus how DeMeco Ryans called plays.
Yeah.
Especially in the early going, because that was my big worry. Too, like, I've been on a couple podcasts talking about the Eagles, and that's my big worry. We've got 2 brand new coordinators, and you look at the schedule, it's like, oh, we should walk into Dallas like 7-0 or whatever, and then we hit that hard stretch. There's a good chance that we're 3-3 heading into Dallas, because again, you're working in 2 brand new coordinators that have never called plays before. Even though we've got so much talent, doesn't matter if you're not consistent in how you're calling the plays. So again, I know Steve Wilkes is a veteran. He's done this a long time, but again, he's working with a new group of guys. So it'll be interesting to see how quickly he takes to what they do best and how he calls those plays as a result.
Love it. And Liz, the final one on Deebo Samuel.
I'm going to go over 780.5 receiving yards. I'm buying too much into the best shape of his life news, but he averaged nearly 40.8. In fact, receiving yards per game from weeks 10 through 18 of the regular season. He missed weeks 15 through 17 there. I don't really want to bet this, because maybe maybe he bounces back, but outside of his 2021 season, he's averaged between 53 and 56 receiving yards per game. So let's say he regresses to 55 receiving yards per game. Over 14 yards, that's still 770. It's tight.
Yeah.
So I'll be optimistic and take the over. But I think this is actually important for a fantasy conversation, more than just like looking at the bets and trying to win the bet. Use it as a fantasy projection, because maybe Deebo only gets you 765 or 770, but basically you can rely on him for 750 to 800 receiving yards on the season. Exactly. And that can help you place where he needs to be in terms of your personal rankings and ADP.
Yeah. It's also a great tool when doing projections, because if you think you're way over on someone and you go and see that you have them projected for 200 yards over what Vegas says they're going to get, you may need to take a step back a little bit.
I was going to say, I've got them at about 400 overs in my projection. So I'm like, what the hell am I missing here?
Guys, that's a wrap for the show. Liz, we cannot thank you enough for taking the time to join Club Fantasy. Remind everyone who somehow wouldn't know where they can find your work, but more importantly, if you have anything big coming up that you want to pitch.
Well, definitely follow me on the socials, though those are changing, I guess. At Liz LOZA _FF is what I'm on Instagram and X. I am going to be on Threads as soon as I get my stuff together and make the transfer. So anyway, at Liz LOZA _FF is where you can find me on social. And I have a contract year player article coming out. I have a really exciting article that I teased a little bit with you guys earlier about. It started as who were your favorite running back dead zone picks? And then it changed to what is the running back dead zone? What is this ADP data? What is shifting? I think it might be alive. I think the dead zone is actually also no longer rounds 3 to 6, but maybe 5 to 8. So all of that data I am currently working through. So I'm excited for that. That'll be a kind of a murky piece. And definitely tune into the Fantasy Football Marathon, which will be on ESPN 1 and 2, August 14th and 15th.
Perfect. One of my favorite blocks of entertainment on ESPN throughout the year, because you guys just crush it for that 24-hour period. It's awesome. So
thank you.
Love it.
Our Look Inside series is in full swing. As you know, with the show is coming to an end, so are the articles. We just dropped articles on Stephon Diggs and T. Higgins this week. We have more to follow, 3 till we're to the end, but we are very close to the end. I believe we only have 4 left. We only have
3 left.
Oh, is it only 3? Yeah, that's
we only have
right,
2 dropping next week.
Yeah, the shows are ahead of the other way around because we skipped Chicago. Anyway, not a lot of articles left, so we've covered a lot of individual players, but we also do team blurbs in each one of those articles, so make sure you look out for those. We just announced the Women of Fantasy Football panel. That's going to be on, 18 days in Canton, Ohio. You can go to the Women of Fantasy Football, women of _FF Twitter handle to see all the great ladies who are going to be talking on that panel. And then make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube page, because my goodness, you are probably missing out on some great content. Every Monday we have my show, Mock It Like It's Hot. We just did an episode with Hutchinson Brown, and we're going to have another Best Ball episode coming up this upcoming week. Summer School is actually our Best Ball dedicated show. That's Monday nights. My show's 11 a.m. That show's 8 p.m. Eastern. Her Story in the Making is every other Tuesday. New episode just dropped with Ty Floyd, multimedia reporter for wonderful episode with the SWAC, ESPN, and Sports Illustrated. And she is a Galvanize alum. Who's Your Caddy is Tuesday nights at 9:30. Dynasty After Party Sunday nights at 8 o'clock. And then let's see, our Women of Fantasy Football, Josh, kicks off in 2 weeks. You want to talk a little bit about that and get us out of here?
Yeah, I'm not going to announce really anything else. I'm just going to say stay tuned. On Friday, I'm going to drop kind of like the intro graphic. We've had Liz on the show, and we've got an absolutely phenomenal guest leading off this year. Big shout out to Kelly Singh for locking that one down. 8 new raffles. 8 new raffles that we're doing. The only tease I will provide, 3 of those jerseys come from the NFC East, 2 of them from the NFC North, 1 from the NFC West, 1 from the AFC North, and 1 from the AFC South.
And all the proceeds of those raffles benefit Galvanize scholarships to help ladies.
It's our Women of Fantasy and Galvanize Scholarship Fund for the boot camps that Laura puts on, the seminars. Faith Enos, one of the co-hosts of Women of Fantasy, just came back from the Nashville seminar they did in June. Ty Floyd, who we had on for Her Story yesterday on Tuesday, talked a little bit about it. She was at that seminar as well. Just everything that Laura does with Galvanize for these women that want to get into broadcasting, it's invaluable experience. And we're so happy that she wants to partner with us and is willing to partner with us and let us help, usher in the next generation of female sports broadcasters.
Perfect. Guys, this show is going to be back next week with the great Lauren Carpenter, so we can finish up the Look Inside series with the Chicago Bears, the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. One of those
that was
things,
painful to write.
I say one of those things doesn't belong in that sentence, but that's okay. And a big shout out to our missing brother, Joe Zollo. Make sure you tune into ESPN Plus tomorrow as his Bismarck Larks take on their alter ego, the Missouri River Motorboaters, on ESPN Plus at 7:35 Eastern. Thank you to everybody who watched. Make sure you tune into the show next week. Always remember, defense wins championships, offense wins fantasy football. We'll see you next week.